Vertex Indirect Tax Accelerator for SAP ERP webcast. I'm Lindsay, and I'll be facilitating today's session. Today our presenters are Brian Wilczewski and Michael Gallela. Before we begin, I'd like to make some announcements. Note the audio options available to you in your invitation. You can listen through your computer or telephone. If you prefer to use the telephone audio, please review your invitation or the webinar login screen for dial-in details. To view the webcast, note the full screen button available to you in the upper right. This button toggles to a full screen view of the presentation. It provides a better view, but just note that you won't see the other pods, such as Q&A, when you're in full screen view. But you can always toggle back and forth. We will offer a PDF of today's presentation at the conclusion of the webcast. These files are provided for future reference. Today's webcast is being recorded, and we will not be opening the phone lines for questions. If you have questions during the presentation, simply enter them into the field in the Q&A pod at the bottom and press enter. Please note that we may not be able to respond to questions until the end of the presentation. That concludes today's announcements. Let's get started, and I'll turn it over to today's presenter. Brian, go ahead.
Great, thanks, Lindsay. Welcome, everybody. The day's going well so far. We're going to cover today, I'm going to go a little bit in the background on what is the accelerator, why do we do it, some of our partnership around that. I'm going to turn over to Michael Gallela, who's going to go through some functionality and really get to the meat of today's presentation, which is a walkthrough. Take you in an SAP system and go through a walkthrough. So we are going to leave time at the end of this, probably 5 to 10 minutes for questions and answers. And as Lindsay stated, as they come up during the webinar, I'd ask that you please just type those into the Q&A box below. Michael and I can see those, and we'll address as many of those as we can at the end here. So we're here today to talk about the Vertex Indirect Tax Accelerator for SAP ERP. A very long name. We like to call it here internally the accelerator, tax accelerator. Why do we do this? I mean, our goal was to make a move to a more comprehensive end-to-end solution, not just calc based on O Series, to deliver this new functionality. We did it in a way that's compatible with an existing approach. So we leverage SAP's RFC technology, which is market approved and accepted with certified interface to that. So hopefully as you hear what we go through today, not to pull a pun off of that, but you'll be ready to take a leap, much like the little fish in the diagram. So key to this and how we were able to accomplish this was through a strategic partnership with LCR-Dixon. Leveraging their expertise in technology, hopefully we've created a win-win. It was over a year ago that we put together this partnership. Why we think this is important to both Vertex, LCR, and you guys, the customers, is combination helps, increase tax automation, use tax-sensitized master data across the organization, and hopefully improve operational efficiency. LCR, as stated up there, you can see number of market-leading solutions, very tested in the market and accepted. And we think this partnership was the foundation to help us move forward. Because the three components, if we look at this end-to-end capability, we have the core capability around the accelerator, delivering a standard core functionality. We have the availability of what we call the Accelerator Plus, or the LCR-Dixon tools, and I'll go into those in a few minutes, that extend that tax technology. And lastly, the third component of the management solution here is the activation services. Looking there at a consistent and repeatable starting point delivered through Vertex. Hopefully, as we stated up front in one of the first slides, the resulting value of this for the customers is going to be greater automation, integration, control, and visibility and efficiency in your tax integration. So addressing the core capability, Vertex Indirect Tax Accelerator for SAP is that. This is a new solution for SAP customers. I'm going to cover a few points here. Probably most important, this is a single SAP hub transport delivered in our namespace. It's a component of the Vertex O Series solution now. So there's some requirements and optionality around this. For those of you who are on the phone who are considering O Series or new customers or looking at a Q to O Series migration, it's required. It's part of the solution. You'll get that as you get 7.0. It's similar if you're an existing O Series VAT customer who's on previous version or moving to 7.0, it's also required for you as well. There's some new capability, and as Michael goes through that, you'll see that we look to standardize on. For those that are on the phone who are existing customers on O, who are going to say 6.0 and are going to be migrating to 7.0, it's optional. So as you learn about the accelerator today, and if you choose to go forward with that, and be our recommendation that you do, that's your election. It's not mandatory that you do that. Probably the third thing I wanted to point out on this is that there is an enhancement roadmap separate, last bullet there, an enhancement roadmap separate from Vertex O Series. So Michael and his team here manage the accelerator much as if you would a product. So there'll be new functionality and new releases over time. So it's not just a static release that we're putting out there with that's going to sit there for a time. Second component, when we looked at the overall picture around the accelerator, is the Accelerator Plus solutions. And these are this extended functionality is where we leverage the LCR-Dixon tool to address some other common gaps and common challenges. So these LCR-Dixon solutions integrate easily with Vertex and standard SAP tax interface. All of their solutions, which are available through Vertex, are coded in ABAP. They're delivered as separate transports. They do reside similar to the accelerator in SAP. We're leveraging LCRs. I mean, LCR has over 240 instances of these solutions, LCR-Dixon solutions deployed in the marketplace. So we're really leveraging them to help address some of these common gaps. So if you look at out of balances, vendor recon, pre-developed tax user exits, drag and drop mapping between SAP and Vertex fields. I mean, really balancing AP invoices, differences there. Automatic, you default on the POs and invoices, automatic tax codes there. Diagnostics, really a tax data analytics program, and all of these. I mean, today's focus is not necessarily on the Accelerator Plus. I mean, our sales folks can talk to you, and in conjunction with LCR can talk you through all these, but this is an important component of the end-to-end story. Really is these extensions and add-on tools. So Michael will talk to a little bit of them when he goes into the demo, but just wanted to lift those up today. Third component, when we talk about support, and really foundation of success for helping customers with these new successes begins with the proper installation. So what we deliver from Vertex and require of customers is an activation service. And this is, as I said, provided by Vertex to, we like to say, install the plumbing so that everything works correctly once you get going. What's most important is to know what it doesn't do. We're not going to configure and deploy O Series. We're not going to do any tax mapping setup, taxability setup, no client specifics. I raise this to your attention because those tasks and efforts are still the responsibility of who you choose to implement, or one of our alliance partners, or through Vertex. So, but do want to lift this up as an integral part of the three legs of the triad, if you will, in terms of capability. So after a little overview there, if you have any questions, please type them in. But I'm going to turn it over to Michael here to talk a little bit more about the specific functionality of the accelerator, and then go through a little pass-through. So.
Okay, thanks, Brian. I want to add on to what Brian mentioned. I think one of the key differences now that this accelerator is a product, much like you're on O Series now and you're on Q, and you have releases and service releases and you plan it. That's what the accelerator is, a piece of functionality. And for those used to dealing with the O Series solutions or Q in SAP, there really isn't a lot of visibility into the solution. You run a transaction in SAP and the tax comes back. There's no flash of light or any bright thing that Vertex was called. It's just the tax comes back. And I think part of what this does, it kind of gives you some a UI or a visibility inside your actual solution to O Series from the SAP side. So I think that's very positive. Having it as a product is very positive because just like any product, there's going to be enhancement requests, there's going to be issues that you want to see fixed, and they're going to be tied to releases. In the past, you would implement Company A in February, and then Company B would be implemented in March, and then you may have done some different things in the company in March that's going to be different than the first company you implemented. Now there's standards because you're on release 2.0 of the accelerator, or you're on 2.1 or 2.2, and we're going to understand what that means from a supportability standpoint and from an enhancement standpoint. You're going to be able much more capable of planning, when do I want to go to the next version of the accelerator? Do I want to go right away? Do I want to wait? Am I not getting advantage of some of the things other clients have gotten? So that's kind of why we did this. We really have commercialized, productized the integration component of SAP into the accelerator. Like Brian mentioned, it's a transport that we deliver. That's very important because it used to be just a document you'd get and you'd have to key it in. The nice thing is with our accelerator is that we also have a service that makes sure that we load everything appropriately. You may have a lot of customizations or configuration in your user exit. That's okay. The accelerator could play in a clean environment or a highly customized environment. And it's kind of like when people move from Q to O, where you say, well, there's all this new functionality in O. Should I take advantage of all of it, or should I just move my Q functionality forward and then gradually take some advantage of some of the new functionality? And those are all options on the table when you go to accelerator. The goal is to kind of take advantage of everything. Like a kid with new toys, you want to take advantage of it, but we understand the nature of it, that you may want to move a little bit slower. The other thing that we've done besides the integration is we've added a lot of tools to the solution, and these are SAP tools, which we're kind of going to go over. So, we all know that the integration helps you run transactions, get your taxes back, but we also added tools to help with and we'll go through the mapping, Q monitor, goods movement, which used to be a separate license, which is now included, address validation. And what we've kind of done is we've taken all these enhancements and kind of grouped them all together in a package. And you're going to see kind of the user menu type structure that we have, where it's going to be very simple to get at all the configuration components that you're going to need for the accelerator. If you could summarize what the accelerator is in a couple of words, it's really a simplified user exit. It means the user exit of data mapping that usually use ABAP coding and to get all those mappings, the availability of additional fields where you were limited in the past, very much reducing the dependence on an IT or an ABAP person to do your user exit work. That is probably the most critical thing that you're going to see. The address information, there's some issues in SAP when you're outside US and Canada using jurisdiction codes, where that is no longer necessary, because if you're in Europe and you're dealing with country level tax, we now allow you in Europe and other regions to use address information instead of tax area ID. You still use your jurisdiction codes or tax area IDs or geocodes from the Q world in US and Canada, but for the rest of the world you don't, and that's important because there's a lot of hard stops in SAP native where a lot of functionality won't work when jurisdiction codes are turned on. Using tax codes for reporting, and there's two flavors of tax code we'll go through. There's the ability to default the tax code on the input, and that's very important because today SAP provides limited ability for that. It's usually only on PO creation, and you could use plant and material where we've enhanced that to give greater functionality on defaulting on the input. And there's also ways to default it post-calculation on the output, so after Vertex has calculated it. So once again, facilitates a lot more flexibility in your setup. Reporting is totally new. We have reporting in O Series. We have reporting in our VRA tool for O Series. We have the returns tool that many people utilize for their tax returns. But now we've developed SAP reports. These are ALV reports that we'll look through when we walk through the system that are run using your data from financials in SAP. Also ways of reconciling between Vertex and SAP, and those are brand new features that we have that I think you're going to really enjoy. So the reconciliation especially if you're doing returns out of Vertex and you want to make sure everything came across from SAP over to Vertex. Here's a traditional code you'd use if you had to map something in SAP. This is ABAP code. It's something that, it will take a long time because it has to get on the queue of an IT person to go ahead and put this in. It also has to be kind of hard-coded. The tax department really doesn't have visibility into this, nor do they want that visibility. Obviously prone to errors because, like any type of coding, there's a lot of syntax and things that have to be followed. And once again, if I wanted to map, my doc type to a flex field, it's not very simple. I really have to log an IT queue. It gets put into the queue based on availability. What we're going to show today is we're going to kind of give some more power to the tax department in controlling the configuration for SAP. A couple of things before we jump into the SAP system. What are the new benefits? One is a user menu. In the past, you'd have to go through the normal SAP menu to kind of go and figure out all the configuration components. We've put that together nicely in an area menu. So everything you need is in this one menu. So when you see that, you can say, that makes sense. Now, if I want to do this or I want to do some of the other functionality, I know where to go and how to access it. Brian mentioned the transport, the ABAP transport namespace. So you need a basis person to load these transports, but you're eliminating the need to go to kind of use a lot of ABAP time. I'm not eliminating it, but you're reducing the ABAP time needed. We still utilize RFC technology in the accelerator, so it's not like, oh my gosh, it's a brand new integration. We're still using tried and true certified RFC technology. We do extend it for VAT. Once again, SAP certifies tax engines for US and Canada. It does not certify engines outside US and Canada. We do use for VAT an extension of the certified solution. Other things to make people more relaxed, queue monitors are very important. So if there are issues with the queue, if people are existing clients now may know the queue could get blocked. Notification services and automated processing is now available with the accelerator. And once again, real-time address cleansing, once that's a separate license. Just want to make sure that it's U.S. only that we utilize address cleansing. The use of tax codes, I think that's probably much more important outside the U.S. and Canada, where everything is very much tax code driven as far as reporting, and you even talk to each other in tax codes, right? You say it's an A1 or it's a B7, and that means something, right? So that's probably more of a VAT solution. I think the flexibility that you're going to see is important because we're trying to put more control into the tax department's hands. Whether you want it or you don't want it, that depends. But I think the main thing is giving more ability to control the upfront work that goes in to make sure the right data is passed to Vertex is critical. And I think being able to enhance that data or extend it or having the tax department have the ability to have some insight into that, I think is very powerful. And the native SAP functionality, once again, is just because in certain countries, jurisdiction codes are turned on. Standard VAT reports for SAP don't work. Plants abroad don't work. We were able to get around that even in our old solution, but that required implicit enhancements. Getting away from the jurisdiction code requirement outside US and Canada, has opened up a lot of just native functionality just by default. We didn't have to do anything. We just got away from that, and now a lot of native functionality works. And enhanced reporting. Vertex never delivered SAP reports. Now we are. We're delivering reports for AP, for AR, for reconciliation, GL reports, and we'll kind of look through some of those reports as we move through the demo. One of the things we've done by working with clients like yourselves and partners is throughout the process of working, we've been learning, we've been building new functionality, and I think one of the things that we've done in the past was, you work with a client and you find some really good features they want to do. We put that in there. You kind of configure it for that client, but then it may not get to the next client, and that's kind of what I was talking before about having a product. What we've done is we've kind of grouped all that learning and we put it into the initial release of the accelerator. So all the stuff we learned from all our clients, we put together all that best practices and knowledge. And now as we move forward, we still learn stuff, right? There's always, clients finding new ways of solving problems, and we say these are really great, we want to put them into our product. So we're taking things back and putting it into the core product, and that's why you're going to see that you may be on 2.0 of the accelerator, but you may want to say, oh, 3.0 is going to have all these features in it, or 2.1 is going to have this feature in it. It's because we're constantly updating and upgrading it. And like Brian mentioned, my group, that's what we do. We develop these tools and we maintain these tools and we enhance these tools. So, once towards the end of the session, we're going to give you a couple of ways of contacting us and how we're going to be available to kind of do a deeper dive into this. But once again, understand that this is a living product that we're going to be constantly enhancing and updating. Okay, we get to our walkthrough now. I'm going to stop sharing here and I'm going to bring up my SAP system. Okay, everyone should be seeing my SAP system. If there's a problem on the line, people could scream at our moderator to say why it's there. But I'm going to go ahead. Haven't seen any people screaming yet. So this is kind of a little bit what I want to spend some time walking through. And it's because instead of looking at slides, it's always better, I think, to kind of see the solution and see what makes it so different. First of all, here's a user exit here's a user menu that we have. And it's structured in a way that we have everything here that you need for your integration to Vertex. And, go through the settings, the tax reports, and then some tools too. The reports, we consider those tools: queue management, goods movement, deferred tax, and conversion utilities. I'll kind of walk through each one. I'll spend a little bit more time on certain areas where I think there's a little bit more of interest. So let's just open this up. I think the main thing we have here is we talk about it as a product, and the accelerator has a couple of different components. It has the accelerator itself, which is, think of that as the SAP side of the house, the user exit code, the transports we provide. Then there's always the SIC, which is the communication component, right? That's the interface between the SAP system and the Vertex API, right? So that the SIC converts the RFCs and the ABAP and SAP language into Vertex language, into an XML message. Then you have your SAP system, which could be on enhancement pack 5, 6, 7, different things you may be on, and then of course the accelerator is a version. For troubleshooting purposes, we built this report that when you run it, it will go and find out what version of SIC you're on, what version of SAP, and what version of the accelerator. The reason for that is for troubleshooting. So if you have to call my group or support and say, look, I'm having an issue, or with the accelerator, the first thing I'm going to say, which one? What are you on? So you can run that report, and it develops a nice report that you could just send to our support group or to my group, and then we'll say, okay, we know where your company is, and then we'll say, oh yeah, that was fixed in 2.2, or no, that feature is not until 3.0. So we'll understand where you are and what you need. So once again, Not very exciting, I know, but it is a nice way to help us communicate instead of saying, oh, I don't know what version we're on, let's dig through this. A nice way that you could just kind of run a simple report to figure that out. Once again, address cleansing is a separate license. Some people may have it already. Some people may not. We've extended address cleansing to support cost centers and profit centers. Once again, always could be set by auto trigger, which means it's automatically if you make a update to an address on a master record. Manual is there's a button that you use on the master record to kind of run it. And of course you have your options of what do you want to go back to SAP and override. Do you want to override the street address or no? With the cleansed address, those are your options that you have. And once again, that is a separate license. We do have separate features for country settings. You know, one of the issues you'll have outside of, if you're not dealing with just pure U.S. transactions, is currency issues. Determine what is the currency of the countries you're dealing with, and also what is the conversion rate, because SAP likes to use conversion rates of a blended monthly rate for finance, and that works very well for financials. But for like many countries, you need a daily rate or a central bank rate. So there's different types of exchange rates that are maintained in SAP, but for tax purposes, that monthly blended rate really isn't what's needed for reporting. So there's different features in SAP. If there's a feature called Plants Abroad, if that's turned on, you don't need this configuration that we provide, because the Plants Abroad enables a lot of other tables that allow you to put this information in. But if you do not have certain features turned on in SAP, Vertex provides these additional configuration tables for you to be able to set similar things as if you did have your Plants Abroad turned on. Tax code settings, the same thing. You know, you're going to have things where you're going to have certain countries have deferred tax, where you don't want to post the invoice, you want to only post the payment, so you're going to have tax codes that are deemed deferred. This is also where, you know, Brian mentioned a vendor recon tool that we have as an add-on tool, and this is kind of where you look at, you know, maybe sometimes your vendor charges you state level tax, but they don't charge you to locals. Right? So you have to do like what's known as a partial accrual, where, you know, and this is, once again, even though they're plus tools, they're all supported through Vertex. So all Accelerator and Accelerate Plus tools, your first line of support is through Vertex. So, you know, I mean, I think that's the two main examples I have for these are the deferred tax, where you don't want to post to Vertex until payment's received. And then we have the concept of partial payments to the vendor, because the vendor's not liable to charge you all levels or whatever, and you could have our vendor recon tool could automate this process where you could automatically accrue what your vendor didn't charge. So vendor charged you state, you need to accrue city and county. Vendor recon automates it. There's also manual processes you can do, but I think that's kind of a nice add-on, especially if you have issues on your purchasing side where you have to make up the difference of what the vendor didn't apply. And then, you know, the external system for VAT, that's kind of standard. That just tells you where you want, which different countries you want to utilize VAT for or tax for O Series or for the Accelerator. That's all standard. You know, just like anything, SAP could be turned on for U.S. and Canada and nothing else. It could be turned for U.S. and Canada and Germany, Japan. You know, it could be turned on country by country. Probably we mentioned before a little bit about mapping. I kind of showed you the user exit ABAP code that you need to map things. And it's, once again, it's very labor intensive. It's an IT function to say, I want to map my region code to flex field 12, right? So what we provide in the Accelerator is a drag and drop mapping tool. And it's as easy as that. Behind the scenes, it does create ABAP code, but it's using drag and drop technology. On the left are your SAP source fields from the common structures. If you have custom fields, If you built a field that is not an SAP standard, they could be added to the left side of the field, right? So there's always the ability, if you have custom, to add to this structure. And the goal is to get as much of your user exit logic into this mapping utility. Once again, you're not beholden to that you must all or nothing. There's still the ability to drop logic into the user exit after it calls this mapping utility, but the goal is to try to put everything here because it's visible, it's very powerful, and it's very flexible. So once again, if I was just looking here and I wanted to say, I don't know where this field is, so I'm going to say I want to find the region code from SAP because there's a lot of stuff there. It'll go and bring me my region code. It'll bring my customer group. I could search either on the regular name of the field, or I could also search on the field name, the SAP field name, because there's a lot of fields up here. I mean, that's the issue. I mean, you look at all these structures, it's kind of intimidating to say, how do I find the field I need? But the search function's kind of nice to do that. The drag and drop functionality, I could come in and say, I want to map my customer group, my customer class, and you've mapped it. And I want to build a hierarchy and say, you know what, I'm not sure which one's available. They may not be populated, so I want to build a hierarchy and say, if not customer group 1, then go to customer group 2. If that's blank, use customer group 3. So you could build a hierarchy and say, I'm not sure if this is going to be available. This is my number one precedence, but if not, I want to build a pecking order, if you will, to say this is how I want this populated. I could also come in and say, if in doubt, I want to just hard code this to an X. If all else fails, make it an X. I could come in here and say, you know what, it's not a precedence, it's really I want to concatenate a bunch of fields into one. So I want to say, from 1 to 2, it's this one, and then I'm going to do GR2, I'm going to do start position 3, and this is going to be my next 2. And I could kind of go through this, and I could kind of build, so my customer class is really going to be the first 2 characters of the group 1 and group 2. So lots of flexibility, lots of ways you could hard code it, default it. You could also convert things to alpha. So if you have a numeric field that has all leading zeros, or you may want to convert this to alpha, and that'll wipe out the leading zeros. So very powerful tools to use in mapping. You do have mappings to, you could do different mappings for FI and AP. Very important because obviously certain fields are not available in FI. You may have different ways if you want to default values based on different things. So very powerful tool, very simple to use. Behind the scenes, all that ABAP code gets done, so you could go tell your boss as a tax person you're doing ABAP code, and you add that to your resumes as you do drag and dropping, saying that you've done ABAP coding because you've done mapping for the Vertex solution. So the tax reports are another feature that I said is brand new. I'm going to kind of walk through a couple of these. One of the things that we never provided was the ability to get at your SAP data. And the problem with SAP data is it's very good, it's very thorough, there's a lot of it. It's in lots of different tables, right? So how do you get a consolidated view of your SAP data, your financials, what's been posted? We provide these tools because a lot of times clients, when you work with clients, and they'll say, well, we really want to create a SAP report that has this. So what we've done is we just standardized it. This has been a client request. Every time we deal with a client, they want to know, can we do this? So we built this. And there's 2 steps. The first step is an extract. And what that does, it goes against, I'm going to say, over 60 tables. And there's like over 300, between the AP and the AR, there's over 300 fields that get pulled. And what it does, it pulls all this data out into a Vertex table. So it almost creates like a view. So obviously the extract, depending on your volume of data, may take a while to load all that in, and depending on the period you're running for and the amount of data. But once it's been moved into a Vertex table, now you have a view of your data. It's very clean. Everything's been connected. Everything's been joined. And then now you have that data that you could run reports off of. So that's where we come to the detail report. And we have a bunch of parameters that you could run this on. Certain parameters are required. We're always looking to enhance this, and if there's things that you don't have or you want us to add, we can definitely do that. You can run it for specific doc numbers or types or tax codes. Required are a couple of fields, your fiscal year and your company code. I'm just going to do something pretty simple and run this way. And you get a nice report. Now, this is a standard SAP reporting functionality. I could double click. I could bring myself to the transaction. I don't want to, I'll go scroll in a minute to the far side here, but just like anything else, you could choose your layout. You could change the layout and move fields. There's going to be a lot of fields you see on these detail reports that you have no interest in. We try to provide as much as possible. We're always looking to add things, but what happens then is it becomes very, very wide, this report. So you could obviously go in and hide columns and not display them, change the order, just like you would any SAP report. The nice thing about this detail report, and I'm going to scroll to the right, and I apologize if this paints poorly on the webcast, but I know that happens sometimes. Everything is linear, probably not a good term, but all your taxes are on, instead of some reports have, everything's on a different line, so state, city, county, it's all so that's 4 lines, and then unfortunately that means your basis gets doubled and tripled, and everything here is linear, right? So everything here is broken out in a line. So you could run a report and it's not going to double and triple your basis at all. I think that's important. The other thing is it's going to tell you differences. It's going to say, what's the difference? It's going to say the difference between what Vertex estimated and what actually was paid. So I always come in here and see what was actually posted, but then you could look at what are the variances. And once again, this is a variance of a Vertex estimate versus what was applied. It's not a difference between what's in Vertex and what's in SAP. That's just important. There's a different report for that. So once again, very, very powerful, very simple to use. Step 1 is to run the extract to get all the data out of the SAP tables into the Vertex table in SAP, and then you could run your transaction. And like anything else, it could be output to different places, and it could be, you can put it through a spreadsheet. All that is all standard SAP functionality we take advantage of. Okay, we repeat that on the AR side. We have a GL reports to compare. I wanted to go a little bit into the reconciliation report because I think that's very, very important. And we've heard it a lot for people who use us for returns. And I think I mentioned this before, where the biggest issue is, all right, it's great. We got all these results from Vertex. Everything's great, no errors, no problems. But how do I know everything from SAP came over to Vertex and was processed? Because Vertex is now doing my reporting. It's using the Vertex database to report. How do I know there's not some journal entries or some other sleights of hands that never made it across to Vertex? So what we did is we provided a new utility, and 2 steps to this as well. Step 1 loads Vertex data from the Vertex reporting database, which is the basis for all the different returns and reporting you do in Vertex, into the SAP table of Vertex. So it extracts data from Vertex, loads it into SAP. Now we already have gathered all our SAP data, right? We've extracted everything there. Now we can run the reconciliation report. A reconciliation report, once again, has parameters. You can do by company code, specific documents, dates, tax codes. I am just going to come in here and run it, for, bear with me, for my one company code. I'm going to get lots of variances. Now, in the VAT world, you shouldn't have any because everything should come across the Vertex. In the U.S. world, there's going to be transactions where they're just paid to vendor, where you may not have anything in Vertex because you're not posting your sales tax to Vertex. So what this report does, it tells you what's in SAP, what does Vertex think, and what's the difference. Now, the difference could be because it's not in Vertex. And that's important to say, oh, okay, this I just paid the vendor. I don't post my sales tax to Vertex. That's understandable. And there's ways you could kind of filter those out if you don't want to see them. The other reason why they could be not in Vertex, because remember, part one of this was you have to extract data out of Vertex and load it into SAP. To do that is data gets into the Vertex reporting database by a movement process that's usually automated that runs from the journal, which is the live database, into the reporting database of Vertex. If that didn't run, or it didn't run before you did your extract, a lot of records aren't going to be rolled into SAP because they just weren't in the reporting database when you ran the extract. So sometimes you have to rerun them. So that's another reason why that might not be there. The other thing, there may be transactions that are deemed not tax relevant, right? You may have certain tax codes that are deemed exempt or don't call Vertex tax codes, right? And obviously those would not come across either. So those are good reasons why you'll have a difference, right? Because they're at least they're explainable. Whether they're good or not, that's arguable, but they're explainable. The bad is when these are, wait a minute, why is this not in Vertex? Why is this, this should have gone across? How could that not be posted? Those are the ones where, you know, that's what keeps us up at night. These are the ones we have to research and figure out why that happened. So, but this gives you an idea of how to troubleshoot it. Is it a certain process that's, you know, this is the same user that's doing this, you know, it's the same thing, it's the same transaction, same tax event. It happened during this 1 month period where we, you know, took on another system or another company code, and you know, so it's going to help you troubleshoot why that is. If you see transactions, the worst thing I could see on this report, and you know, is if it's in Vertex and SAP, but there's a difference. That's where you say, oh, wait a minute, something's wrong, and that's sometimes on, you know, and it could happen on the VAT side where you're posting your tax paid to vendor, but you know, you're posting the Vertex estimate instead of what you paid the vendor. That shouldn't happen either, but once again, this is the ability to flag if there's a process issue that's incorrect, that we could go in there and troubleshoot it. So very powerful tools. The reconciliations run from both sides, AP and AR. There's a administration, because remember, we're loading all this data into a Vertex table. That can get very big, that table. Because think about all your volume, just keep loading up this table. There are ways you could delete records from that table, and once again, it's just deleting the Vertex table. It's not deleting your actual financials and things that are posted to SAP. But you know, you could delete it, and then you can rerun stuff and reload the table. It's not, you know, it's not something that once you delete it, it's gone. There's also auditing to kind of archive, and there's different utilities we utilize. But I think the main thing is, it's a nice tool. I think it supplements your solution. I think it gives a nice view into not only your Vertex data, but your SAP data. And it's very accessible to a tax group. Other things that we provide, queue management. And, you know, once again, the queue's tricky. Hopefully there's never anything wrong with the queue, right? But, you know, if it does get blocked, we have this automated methodology to say who gets notified. If there's a connection issue, like someone kicked the plug out of the wall, or you know, or something happened, that something's blocking the queue. It could be a SAP email, or it could be a, you know, your Outlook or your Lotus Notes email. It doesn't have to be your an SAP email. So you could have a notification, set up many notifications if the queue's blocked. This thing I have set up to run every 5 seconds to check to make sure everything's running well. You could set that to be anything you want. Once again, it's a nice to have to know that, wait a minute, I never knew the queue was blocked. You're going to get these notifications that that happens. And then there's utilities to say, what do I want to do when it's blocked? Do I want to just delete the queue and then rerun these transactions? Different ways you could set that up and configure it. And like anything, there's a maintenance log of things that you've deleted from the queue or things, so once again, things aren't lost because you've run delete from the queue. And then there's reports that you can say what actually got posted to Vertex, right? So you could kind of run a transaction and you could run it by, these you probably want to run by a reference document. I'm not sure if you just want to see everything that's come across or not, but you could run it based on different values and different selection criteria to utilize. One of the other things that we provided was goods movement used to be a separate solution, and I'm not sure if anyone's utilizing it now. Now it's provided as part of the Accelerator standard, so that's just additional functionality that used to be a separate license, and now it's all rolled into Accelerator. Deferred tax, once again, really predominantly, might as well call it deferred VAT because it's Mexico, France, certain Asian countries require you, it's not a calculation issue, it's more for reporting to say in SAP you have to get the estimate back on the invoice, but you can't do a return yet on that, right? So you can't claim that tax back or put on a return until the payment's received or paid. So there's a process in SAP that we take advantage that once a payment comes in, moves the tax from a deferred tax code to a standard or to a target tax code. Vertex takes advantage of that and makes sure that we get called when the tax is posted and the payment comes in. And then conversion utilities. One of the things, if you're coming from a Q to O standpoint, you're going to have a need to change from a geocode to a tax area ID. What Vertex has done is built a solution around the SAP OSS note that's out there. So it's not reinventing the wheel, it's kind of putting some nice UI around that standard process. You definitely look at all the different ones you can convert. It used to be just customer vendor. Now, you may have open purchase orders that you have, and you're like, what's going to happen there? I need to get a jurisdiction code in the U.S. or Canada on my open POs. That can be done as well. So different ways you could do that. You could set it for different things that you want to do. You could limit what gets converted. Once again, outside the U.S., we don't use jurisdiction codes anymore in the Accelerator. U.S., Canada can still use jurisdiction codes because that's kind of the SAP standard, and that's basically what we're trying to conform to. And I think just to wrap this up, I think one of the things that the Accelerator does, it works very closely with native SAP, and we have a very good relationship with SAP. We work with them a lot. Brian communicates with them and has standard meetings with them. The goal is not to be reinventing the wheel here and try to go. It's really trying to play in the sandbox that's SAP and enhance it. And I think that's what the Accelerator's done, and that's what we're going to continue to do. And as we continue to build out the solution, add more tools here, we already have ideas for our next release already that's being cooked, and also it's an exciting time here, and it's kind of a fun time for us because it's actually a product that we could support and roll out to you and obviously get your feedback on it. So at this point, I am going to stop sharing my SAP screen, and we're going to have some next steps that we can go to.
Yeah, thanks, Michael. First of all, just a little logistics thing. We did drop one question, so Kelly, you had a question on data volume. If you don't mind resending that question, I appreciate it while we're talking here for the next few minutes, and we'll get to the questions. So Michael walked through a lot of detail regarding the Accelerator and the benefits and the value. Obviously, it's a lot to consume within a 1-hour session here. So if you have questions, we're going to get to our contact information here in a minute, but feel free to reach out that way or your salesperson. I do want to lift up Vertex Exchange. Hopefully some of you on the phone here today have been to Exchange. If not, I'd encourage you to go. Our next customer conference is at the end of October in Orlando. We've posted the link up there where you can register and find out more. And what I really want to highlight out of here is a couple things. We have an SAP-specific users group, special interest group as we call it, a SIG, that will be having that Tuesday morning from 8 in the morning till 2 in the afternoon. And there's a number of other sessions scattered throughout Exchange that are going to deal specifically with SAP topics. The SIG is a great opportunity to come together with a like-minded community with common challenges and questions to learn more. In addition to the special interest group, we're also going to be doing a specific session with LCR-Dixon on the Accelerator Plus tools at the end of that SIG. That's going to be from 1 to 2 p.m. that afternoon, a dedicated room and opportunity for customers to come in and find out more about the Plus tools and talk to the LCR-Dixon experts on those. And Vertex will be there as well. And in parallel to that, if you are attending Exchange or thinking about it, one-on-one meetings can be easily requested. You can do those when you sign up for Exchange, or if you've already signed up for Exchange and now you've seen this and you're interested in sitting down with Michael one-on-one or any of our team one-on-one to learn more about this, or LCR-Dixon, their folks to learn more about the Plus tools, please email Dawn, whose email is listed up there, and we can get that set up. And if you're at Exchange, and if you're not at Exchange, you can reach out to, I'm going to go skip Q&A real quick. You can reach out to myself or to Michael. Our contact information is up there.
And we usually deal, like, any problems or concerns go to Brian, any positive phrase, and
yeah, as always,
it goes to me, Michael. But, feel free to send Brian any concerns you may have. But do we want to go to, there's some questions.
Yeah, and I'd encourage you, we put our contact information up there, but please reach out. If there's a salesperson on the Vertex team that you're working with, please reach out to them as well. But as far as questions...
Yeah, I'll take, I'm going to just take a couple that came up that I think I'm going to try to tie together from Brian and from Michael. One, I think, like Brian mentioned, if you're an existing O Series client, you're not a VAT client, you're sitting there, you could go to 7.0 without the accelerator. That is not a requirement.
It's optional.
It's optional. There are different flavors of people who are on 6.0 O Series. Some people have LCR already in their in-house, some don't. So we will be with LCR also at Exchange, but we definitely work with that. We understand, we've been partnered with LCR for a long time. We've just really gotten very close. Obviously, we've become we're design partners now. So we work with all different flavors of that. So if there's a scenario where you have, Vertex, and you're using, vendor recon, or you're using Spot or something like that, there's ways that we work that in to when you move to 7.0. Those are good questions, but we understand not everyone is just, new to O Series, or they may have existing solutions. But I just want to convey that because I know that could be a concern. Accelerator is if you're a VAT client, you need it when going to 7. If you're a Q to O or new to O, yes.
Yes.
If you're an existing O Series client, so if you do not have that need, if you're not a VAT, you're using US Canada, you do not need to go to Accelerator. So I hope that answers a couple of the concerns. It just seemed like a common theme in the questions, and my apologies for not making that a little clearer.
Yeah, and just tailing off of that, a question in terms of, for those that are on 6.0 and moving to 7.0 and do elect to get the accelerator, there is an additional fee for that. We've unified it across all the customer base, but you can reach out to the sales folks and they'll be able to discuss that with you in terms of what that costs. And that only applies, that additional cost applies if you're upgrading or migrating to 7.0 and elect to go with the accelerator.
trying to see if there's a question about if there's a way to attach a physical copy of an invoice to the reports. Not yet. Good idea. Something that's doable. Once again, these are the inputs that I like to hear, and whether we see you at Exchange or you email us directly, these are the things where we're always building out a roadmap for these products, and we're always looking for enhancements. I think that's. I mean, there's a lot of other questions, but I see the time. I'm cognizant of the.
Yeah, so again, we put our contact information up there.
And we'll respond to these questions, I guess, as if we haven't gotten to them here, as they keep kind of growing a little bit, we will respond to your questions.
Yep.
Then offline.
Thank you, Michael and Brian. This concludes today's webcast presentation. As a final thank you for participating, we will provide a PDF of the presentation available for download.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.